Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into this story, do me a solid. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dives. Today, we're uncovering the story of a weapon that could have changed everything, but ended up as a ghost, a mere footnote in firearms history. One wrong turn, one stubborn idea, and a brilliant invention gets tossed on the scrap heap. Ready to find out how a stroke of genius collided with cold, hard reality? Let's get into it. And don't forget to drop a comment at the end telling me what you think. Was the general right to cancel this project, or was it a huge mistake? You can never have too much ammo. The strange tale of the ZB-47 submachine gun. Picture post-war Europe, a continent exhausted after 6 years of hellish warfare. Cities lie in ruins, economies are shattered, yet armories around the world are overflowing with weapons. Millions of rifles, machine guns, and submachine guns. You'd think, why invent something new when there's enough gear to last for decades? But it's precisely in this moment, amid the smoke and ashes, that the boldest ideas are born. War is about quantity. Peace is about quality. And what about a country stuck between East and West? Let's talk about Czechoslovakia. Yes, that's right, Czechoslovakia, not the Czech Republic. This is a key point to understanding the whole story. A country that ceased to exist in 1939, absorbed by the Third Reich, and was reborn in 1945. Its legendary arms industry, with famous factories like Česká Zbrojovka, had spent the entire war producing for the German Wehrmacht. Now, after liberation, a painful question arose. What next? Keep the German MP-40 Schmeissers in service? That was politically impossible, a blow to national pride. And besides, that weapon, for all its merits, was purely a wartime, expendable tool. They wanted something of their own, something better, something unusual. It was in this atmosphere of an ideological vacuum and creative surge that it appeared, the ZB-47, the brainchild of the talented designer Václav Holek and his brother, František. The army had set forth a task that seemed simple on the surface, but was devilishly complex inside. They needed a submachine gun that was light, no heavier than 6.5 pounds, 3 kilograms. Simple and cheap to manufacture. Compact for paratroopers and tank crews, with no protruding parts to snag on hatches, gear, or parachutes. And most importantly, something special. This last point ruined everything, but it also gave us one of the most fascinating pages in firearms history. What does special mean? It means not like everyone else's. Not another clone of the MP-40 or the PPSH. It was a challenge to engineering ingenuity. And the Holek brothers accepted that challenge. Brilliant madness. The magazine you can't see. The main problem with any compact automatic weapon is the magazine. A standard box magazine holding 30 or 40 rounds sticks down like a crutch, increasing the weapon size and making it awkward to carry. And if you make it high capacity, say 72 rounds like the military dreamed of, the problem gets much worse. What did the Holeks come up with? They went for a radical solution. They hid the magazine inside the weapon. Imagine this. You pick up a ZB-47 and you can't immediately figure out where the bullets go. The magazine, a double stack, huge one, was located in the pistol grip, but at an angle. And this is where the magic, bordering on madness, began. The cartridges in this magazine lay with the bullets facing up. Yes, you heard that right. Up, meaning in a position completely unnatural for feeding. A normal bolt, moving forward, simply couldn't pick up a cartridge and chamber it. It required a special mechanism, and the Holeks created one. They added a ratchet mechanism, a gear device similar to what you find in clocks or wind-up toys. When the bolt moved back, a special long rod would engage this ratchet. It would turn and, in turn, move the follower inside the magazine. The follower, with its tooth, would push the next cartridge out and literally toss it into the path of the bolt, which was already moving forward to pick it up. This wasn't feeding, it was an acrobatic trick. Incredibly complex, incredibly fragile, but incredibly beautiful from an engineering standpoint. Two main versions were created, an infantry model with a wooden stock that housed a full 72-round magazine, and an airborne model with a telescoping wire stock. And here awaited another oddity. It turned out that with the stock folded, the magazine simply wouldn't fit into the airborne version. They had to make a shorter one for it, holding only 32 rounds. You can imagine the generals' faces when they were presented with this idea. Comrade soldier, don't insert the magazine before you jump. After you land, unfold the stock, then insert the magazine, and then start shooting. Naturally, this idea was rejected immediately. Dreams and reality in post-war Czechoslovakia. To understand why the ZB-47's fate was tragic, we need to look at the economics. Czechoslovakia in the late 1940s was a country falling into the Soviet sphere of influence. Nationalization of industry was beginning, a planned economy was being implemented, and orientation toward the Eastern Bloc was the order of the day. Arms factories were expected to produce not only for their own army, but also for future Soviet satellite states. Under these conditions, the main criteria became not genius or unusualness, but standardization, cheapness, and ease of repair. Imagine a field workshop somewhere in Bulgaria or East Germany. A mechanic used to the simple as a hammer PPSH is handed a ZB-47 with its ratchet mechanism. For him, it's like a broken spaceship, training thousands of specialists, creating special tools and spare parts. All of this would have been a crushing burden on the budget of a young socialist state. Furthermore, the Cold War was beginning. Armies needed not unique curiosities, but millions of units of reliable Kalashnikov-like weapons, which was being created at exactly the same time. The concept of you can never have too much ammo is good for a police operation or urban combat, but for a mass army where soldiers are taught to conserve ammunition, the priority was reliability, not magazine capacity. The cartridge that became a curse. But the main problem for the ZB-47 lay where it was least expected. In the cartridge, the standard 9x19mm parabellum cartridge has a slight but very important taper to its case. This is done for reliable extraction of the spent casing from chamber. However, when you try to stack 72 of these tapered cartridges into a long, straight magazine, they start to tilt, jam, and make feeding impossible. The 32-round magazine still worked somehow, but the large, infantry one failed constantly. And here, Václav Holek made, in my opinion, his biggest mistake. Instead of revisiting the magazine design, he charged ahead. He developed a new cartridge, the 9mm cylindrical 9mm Valkyrie. Essentially, it was the same 9x19, but the case was almost a perfect cylinder. The difference in diameter between the base and the mouth of the case was a tiny 0.06 of a millimeter. This was technically elegant. The ZB-47 could still fire the old cartridges, but with a risk of jams. However, the new cartridge could only be used in it. Put yourself in the shoes of a military logistician. Your warehouses are full of captured German ammo. All of Europe is standardizing on 9x19. And someone brings you a weapon and says, "Here, now you need to set up a separate production line, separate packaging, separate accounting for these cartridges because our SMG is so special." It was a death sentence. The generals, upon hearing this, must have been horrified. A zoo of crazy ideas. It's important to understand that the ZB-47 wasn't the only contender. The competition for the new submachine gun turned into a showcase of engineering oddities. This was a time when Czechoslovak designers, freed from the constraints of German standards, let their imaginations run wild. There was, for example, the ZH-47 by designer Jaroslav Halacek. Its magazine was also hidden, but the cartridges were unscrewed by the rotation of the bolt itself. This was so complex that the weapon refused to fire in full auto. It only worked if you manually loaded cartridges one by one directly into the chamber. A useless toy. There was the ZK-471 with a wire stock and its own lever feeding system. And against this backdrop, the ZK-466 looked relatively normal, with a magazine that simply folded forward along the barrel. Simple and functional. Judgment Day. The trials were brutal. The weapon had to withstand 80,000 rounds. This is a colossal figure, showing the level of reliability the Army demanded. The ZB-47 failed this test spectacularly. Let's break down why it was rejected. Fragile magazine. That invisible magazine was easily dented by a light impact. After that, it was impossible to insert into the weapon. A catastrophe in field conditions. Overweight. Instead of the required 6.5 pounds, the loaded weapon weighed almost 10 pounds. A heavy SMG means a tired soldier and a loss of mobility. Poor accuracy. The complex feeding system and the weapon's balance prevented accurate shooting. It was good for hosing bullets at close range, but not for much else. Difficult to train. Soldiers had to be trained long and hard to disassemble, clean, and clear jams in this mechanical marvel. There's no time for that in a mass army. An ergonomic nightmare. The ZB-47 had no proper pistol grip. You were supposed to hold it by the magazine housing, which was awkward and unsafe. The safety was positioned so that a left-handed shooter couldn't use it and would just feel it digging into their hand. And finally, imagine a pouch for a 72-round magazine. It would have been huge, heavy, and completely impractical. So what won? The competition was ultimately won by a much simpler and more pragmatic design. The SAVZ.48B by that same Yaroslav Halachek. This submachine gun, also known as the CZ-48, 23, etc., was of a classic layout but with one key innovation. The magazine was housed in the pistol grip. This was a brilliant and simple solution to the compactness problem that would later be adopted worldwide, right up to the Israeli Uzi. It was simple, cheap, reliable, and fired standard ammunition. It became the workhorse, while the ZB-47 remained the failed poet. A ghost of lost potential. The ZB-47 is the tragedy of a genius who refused to compromise with reality. This weapon was ahead of its time by about 30 years. We would see similar schemes with horizontal magazines or rotary feeders later in experimental designs from the late 20th century. But in the late 1940s, it was an unaffordable luxury. It could have become a cult weapon for special forces, where capacity and compactness are key and mechanical complexity is offset by high training levels. But in the era of mass armies, there was no place for it. It stands as a monument to how one brilliant but impractical idea can overshadow all of a design's virtues. It reminds us that in firearms design, as in life, what matters most is not how unique you are, but how needed and useful you are here and now. The ZB-47 was a beautiful answer to a question nobody was asking. So that's the story. A story of how a dream was shattered by harsh requirements. What do you think? Did the ZB-47 have a chance? Should they have perfected it, no matter the cost? Or were the generals absolutely right to choose the simple and reliable SAW? VZ.48B. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious. And of course, if you enjoyed this, subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and hit that bell for notifications. We got plenty more stories about forgotten and unique weapons coming up. See you next time.